Hi everyone, these are anatomy and physiology videos for healthcare students. In this video, we're going to discuss skin accessory structures. So we're going to talk about glands, hair, and nails as skin accessory structures. So in the skin, we have exocrine glands. Exocrine means that these glands secrete their substances onto the body surface or to the outside of the body. Keep that exo prefix in mind as it's a great clue. So the two kinds we're going to discuss are sweat glands, also called sudoriferous glands, and oil glands, which are also called sebaceous glands. Take a look at this great picture. You may have learned the histology slides in your course already, and you may recognize that tissue type. It's simple cuboidal epithelial tissue. Let's talk about the general structure of a gland, such as a sweat gland. Now, this one is not attached to a hair. It just is opening by itself onto the skin surface. And the general structure follows this format. The gland is at the bottom. There is a tube transporting the sweat toward the skin surface. That's called the duct, not a quack quack duct. This is DUCT. And then there's a pore opening onto the skin surface. And that's where the secretion, whether it's sweat, oil, whatever, comes out onto your skin. And again, here's another great picture of simple cuboidal epithelial tissue that creates the structure of these kinds of exocrine glands. Let's talk about sebaceous glands. So here I've marked one. It's associated with the hair. In fact, sebaceous glands are always associated with hairs. They secrete oil or sebum onto the skin surface. Their job is actually twofold, partly to help moisturize, waterproof, and lubricate the skin, but also the hair. So oil is important for both skin and hair. And since oil is slightly acidic, it also inhibits bacterial overgrowth on our skin surface. So it's interesting that as human beings, we opt for cleanliness over the function of oil. If you go into any drugstore, any big box store, you're going to find aisles and aisles of conditioners, lotions, oils to help replenish the oils that we're washing away from both our hair and our skin. This is a really cool picture of a sebaceous gland. The only thing that we're not seeing here is the hair that's being attached to this sebaceous gland, but really cool structure that you're getting from this one. And here's another sebaceous gland. I'm going to circle those for you down here at the bottom. And it's not a perfect picture, but you can see the hair and the growth of it kind of circled here in blue. So you get a sense of how all of this is related together. Now let's turn our attention to another kind of exocrine gland. This is called a sudoriferous gland, fancy name for a sweat gland. So they come in two forms, apocrine or apocrine and eccrine. Apocrine or apocrine glands are always associated with the hairs in our stinky parts, pubic region, groin, axillary, which is your armpit region. I'll tell you an easy way to remember this. I remember the prefix apo sounds like ape, and apes are hairy. So these sweat glands are always in the hairy regions of our bodies. Now, the kind of sweat they release is not meant to be for thermoregulation. This sweat is not meant to cool us down. In fact, this sweat is chemically different. It's more of a milky white, lipid-rich kind of secretion. So when we think about sweat glands, what we normally think about are eccrine sweat glands. They're located all over your entire body. Even the palms of your hands, soles of your feet, and your face have eccrine sweat glands. So the sweat that is produced by these glands is meant for thermoregulation. In other words, when you're hot and your eccrine sweat glands produce sweat, that sweat evaporates off your skin and leaves you feeling cooler. Sweat is mostly water, which is why it evaporates readily, but there's also some salts and waste products like urea that are found in the sweat secretions. That's why if you get sweat running into your mouth, it does have that salty flavor to it. So sweat itself does not stink. However, if bacteria on your skin feed off of the sweat that's left behind, they can reproduce, and in order, they will leave their own waste products on your skin surface, and that's what makes us have a body odor associated with sweating. So for that reason, you might think of sudoriferous. You can almost hear the word odor hidden in there. That's an easy way to remember that sudoriferous glands are sweat glands. So I've marked the sweat gland here, and just to make a point, the sebaceous glands are always associated with hairs. That means you do not have sebaceous glands on the hands, on the feet, external genitalia, or lips. But sweat glands, like eccrine ones, they're found everywhere. So let's talk about hair. So hair grows from a follicle that's embedded deep within our skin. In fact, that hair follicle is stratum basal of the epidermis. It just happens to take a deep dive down into the dermis. So you can see the dotted line here that's creating that stratum basal also serves as the hair follicle that provides growth for your hair root or hair bulb. So let's walk through the different parts of the hair. The part that you can see sticking up above the skin surface is dead, keratinized hair. It's basically, some keratin. It's wrapped around a cuticle, or rather, the cuticle is wrapped around a medulla, and that is what sticks up above. It's all dead. We can trim that off. There's no feeling in any of that hair. So be careful if you go to the barber shop and say, hey, I want my dead ends trimmed. They'd be rightful to shave you bald. Now the bulb is sitting down below, and it has a little kind of a horseshoe-shaped structure, the papilla. Those regions are involved in producing growth for the hair. So of course we know if we pull our hair out by the roots, we're going to have, an issue because it's got to regrow back. So that bulb and papilla down there are providing growth for the hair. The follicle is that ring of stratum basal cells surrounding that hair. The follicle is what gives rise to the growth at the bulb and the papilla region. Now, if you damage the follicle, that may permanently damage hair growth. So when people have electrolysis done to permanently end hair growth, that's what they're trying to damage, is that follicle. One more structure, let's take a look at that erector pili muscle. Erector means to stand straight. Pili means hair. This little involuntary smooth muscle stands your hairs on end when you're cold or when you're scared. So, we're not very hairy creatures, but if you've ever seen a cat puff up when it's been, intimidated or scared, it's to make itself look bigger. Well, in us, that doesn't really do a whole lot for our hairs to stand on end when we're scared. But the goal of having hair stand on end when you're cold is actually to help us trap heat closer to our skin surface. So it may not do a whole lot to make us look bigger and intimidating, but it can help us trap heat. So goosebumps are formed when those erector pili muscles make those hairs stand straight. Really cool picture here. You've got a hair emerging from a follicle. There is the hair. I've outlined it in yellow, and I've put a star on the follicle. So the only thing missing is getting to see it emerge above the skin surface and become the hair shaft. Let's talk about the parts of a nail. Interesting how the parts of a nail and the parts of a hair are kind of similar in the way that they're growing. So you can see the nail bed in this picture. That is the part of your skin upon which the nail plate is going to rest. And the nail plate is what you can see. The nail bed is underneath. You can't actually see that. The free edge is what sticks off the end. That's what you trim. The lateral nail fold sits on either side of your nail. There is a piece of skin under your nail called the hyponychium. And there's also a piece of living tissue at the base of your nail. That's called the eponychium. So it's living skin. Unlike the cuticle happens to be dead. That's a piece of skin that has grown over the lunula portion of your finger or your fingernail. All right, so those parts are labeled on there for you. Let's go ahead and do a review now. Let me give you a moment to see if you can locate these structures on this picture. When you're ready, you can restart the video and then we'll pick up and label. All right, let's start with that hair shaft. That's the part that sticks up above the skin surface. The bulb and the papilla are at the bottom of that hair. That's where the growth is occurring for that hair. Sebaceous glands are always found associated with hairs. This is the erector pili muscle that stands hairs on end, makes them stand up straight, gives you goosebumps when you're cold. And then finally, here's a sweat gland pore. Well, thanks for watching my video. If you liked my video, please consider following my channel. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments for me.